Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and this is Regular Guy Training. So let's talk about this for 1 second because it's fairly obvious to a lot of people out there. But for those of you that are unaware of a lot of different things that go on, I might as well talk to you about it, right? Let's go ahead and talk about California. Now, the second I bring up California, all kinds of people that don't live in that state are just kind of like, well, fuck that. And a lot of people don't really pay attention in that state as a whole because let's face it, a lot of Pro 2A guys are single issue voters, and the very second that a state goes anti gun, they're like, fuck that, I'm going to work on my state, things that I can affect in my state, elect the proper people that go into place, and that kind of deal, right? So, unfortunately, though, what we do have to understand here as well is that there are a lot of people that are Pro 2A in California, right? And it's very difficult for them for a variety of reasons to get really anything done. And honestly, I view it as kind of amazing that gun ownership is allowed in the first place in that state because of exactly how ridiculous it is. Now, let's take a moment and really grasp how absolutely ridiculous this state is, right? This is a state that is very, very much anti-Second Amendment and that kind of stuff. Their economic policies are all geared towards feel-good policies that are not really effective at all. It's been made by not just government leadership within California, but various other people that live there also, that they look down upon the various other states, particularly the South, and that kind of stuff. Well, let's go ahead and think about or talk about exactly how effective California really is. Okay, and I'm going to take just a second to talk about this before I get on that, right? We're getting ready to do a class set out in Winnemucca, Nevada. It's on the schedule and that kind of stuff. It's going down in April. And for those of you that are in California that want to go ahead and come out and play with us and that kind of thing, actually get trained up and that kind of deal, we're going out there. Because we actually have a flagpole out there now, which is very interesting to me because I want to see what kind of engagement that we get out there. Now, let's talk about this because it's very important. California is one of the most leftist states in the union. It is the prime example. It is a leadership cast state of leftist policy and that kind of stuff. So let's go ahead and think about exactly how successful this state really is. This is a state on the ocean that imports its water from other states because a water purification plant has never been a thought to these people, apparently. But then again, that would require you to actually embrace some capitalist sensibilities and that kind of thing. This state is the beacon of leftist ideology, thought processes, and political sentiment as far as lawmaking is concerned. But almost, and by almost I mean like 48% of the entire nation's homeless population is in this state. Now, this homeless population is actually a pretty diverse cast of people. Number one, and the most prominent demographic of people that populate the homeless population in California is failed middle class, which, as a note, by the way, all of their economic policies are geared towards basically fucking the middle class as much as possible because their welfare system is holy shit ridiculous. It's so ridiculous that there are so many individual taxes within that state simply to live there that, by the way, the majority of what you're taxed for within that state is for that welfare system. Okay? Not 30 or 40%, it's most of it. Most of the taxes that you pay toward that state go towards their welfare system, which is doing so well. Okay, and as a for instance for that, their sales tax is absolutely fucking ridiculous. And one of the big things to pay attention here too is This state is near the oil refinery states, right? It's very close to the oil refinery states out west. And yet people are paying on average of $4 a gallon for gas. Where does all that taxed money go? Whereas here on the east side of the country, in the south, that they talk so much shit about, we're paying. I drove past the local Wally World, and it was at like $2.18 a gallon. And I'm not very far from Nashville, right? So you can't say that that's because I live in the middle of fucking nowhere. I'm like 35 minutes from Nashville. So there's that, right? Here's another thing, right? Let's get back on their anti-Second Amendment stance. Published in the news is 3 air quotes newsworthy shootings that happened in 3 days. And it's kind of funny because I shared an article highlighting exactly that on my personal Facebook page and that kind of stuff. And the first thing that happened was somebody that's familiar with what's going down in California is just kind of like, just 3, huh? That's kind of weird. I'm glad that Compton and Oakland and Los Angeles have chilled the fuck out, because their violent crime is absolutely fucking staggering in those states. Or in those cities, rather. Okay? This is a state that has so little funding toward its own fire suppression teams that that funding for those programs is one of the principal reasons why half the state gets lit on fire every year. Okay? This is, again, the cultural icon for leftist ideology and that kind of stuff. Their education system is dead last in the union. And they look down on people, for instance, in the South, like the state of Tennessee, which is growing it's doing very well, economically speaking, right? But your education system is last in the union. That's interesting. The only thing noteworthy that comes out of California is mass media publications, and of course that ties in with Hollywood, which is bleeding money by the day because of how extra woke they are. Absolutely no originality coming out of that side of the house. For instance, they sat there and they took the Batwoman comics, which are actually not all that bad, and they turned it into like a prime state of wokeness, to the point where that show's about to get canceled in its first season. They took my childhood and murdered it by absolutely butchering the Star Wars franchise. Okay? And for those of you that went out and saw the Terminator movies, look, the Terminator movies, as far as plot, is already really, really, really dumb. And they somehow made it worse with the most recent release. Okay, for those of you that are Terminator fans, it's like, and for those of you that were thinking about going to go see the new Terminator movie, don't. It's terrible. I'm going to spoil it for you. John Connor gets shotgun blasted instantly, and he is replaced by a Mary Sue. This is a state that's literally failing at everything it touches. And if you look at their economic policies and that kind of stuff, it is as close to outright socialism as you can get in the United States. And yet, Democrat politicians want us to go in that direction? I'm sorry, no. Right now, there is a culture war going on inside the United States. And it's the culture war of people that embrace facts or their feelings. Okay? And unfortunately, there's a very long list of types of people to blame and that kind of stuff, but we have to get this down immediately and understand that millennial, boomer, hippie, whatever, you have to understand this. California is the beacon of leftist ideology, and for years straight, more people have left than have moved in. Okay? And it's not just because of politics, it's literally impossible to live there, and it's because of leftist policy. You have to understand, California is part of the Union. Okay? You have to understand that as far gone as they seem, unfortunately, that state is going to have to get into nightmarishly bad straits before it starts turning around. Before Hollywood loses so much fucking money that they actually start to turn out shit that isn't as woke as possible. Because people are starting to catch on that that's exactly how you go broke as fuck. Look, I'm not the only person that has sat here and talked about this kind of stuff. Okay? But if you want an example as to exactly how leftist and socialist policies are not going to work, okay, we could sit here and talk about healthcare, and I could bring up the number one reason why, like, socialist healthcare is the dumbest fucking thing ever. Because all you have to do is look at the VA and that system and how absolutely fucking retarded that is. But I don't have to. I don't have to because I have a whole ass state, a big state, that as far as population and publications and the capability for industry, it should be crushing people in the Union. And this state is bleeding itself dry. It's turning itself really into a Venezuela, honestly. And it's only really a matter of time before that state fails utterly. Because the only thing of worth that comes out of that state is mass media publications, and mass media publications are failing by the day because of shit like that. So, that's all I really have on the subject. I just figured I'd comment on it because we'll never see talk of those shootings ever again that happened in California. Not in mass media publications. They'll pop up and they'll immediately go away. There'll be no national discussion based off of that because that is exactly what Democrat politicians have been pushing for as far as magazine limitations, weapons limitations, the near impossibility for carry permits out there, right? And you still have shit like that happening. Because if they were to sit there and talk about it, they'd have to sit there and talk about all the policies that they want are not going to work. And then that leads them to the next logical evolution or illogical evolution of that thought process, and it's the ultimate goal. And the ultimate goal is to disarm entirely. Create registrations and disarm entirely is the only next step, because these people don't think in terms of maybe we should just blame the guy. Maybe we should quit trying to medicate our children instantly. Maybe an 8 to 10-year-old boy that's moving at 10,000 miles an hour, because that's how his body works, shouldn't be fed Ritalin into the dirt. Maybe we should take into account that every single one of these shooters is on psychotropic drugs. All of them. It's literally the only constant between all of them, besides the fact that obviously they're crazy enough to do wild shit like that. And maybe we should have armed men defending our kids like everything else important in our lives. But I'm certain this video is getting demonetized instantly, and I'm absolutely certain it's not going to go very far in the algorithms and that kind of thing of YouTube. So here's the thing, right? For those of you that are subscribed to me on YouTube and that kind of stuff, you have to, number one, make sure that you are subscribed to me for people that watch my content consistently. And two, after you've made sure that you've subscribed on a little red lettering and that kind of stuff, there's a little bell icon that pops up next to it. Click on that and then set yourself up for all notifications, because that's how you're notified as to whether or not you are subscribed to me and will actually receive notifications. And for those of us that aren't on the extreme left, will notice that on a constant basis we're having to check this because random people are being unsubscribed from channels or not receiving notifications because that magically gets clicked off. We have to keep this up, okay? There wouldn't be at all an investigation on the people that actually murdered Epstein and all the other stuff that he was going to bring forward if we didn't meme it into the dirt and keep it in the public eye. We have got to call these fuckers out when they do retarded shit, and this is a big part of it. Okay? We have got to keep doing this stuff. We've got to keep it in the public eye, and we can't forego places like YouTube and Facebook because those are the largest outlets for this kind of thing. That is how you stay in the public eye. And by all means, go to places like Gunstreamer and Full30 and that kind of stuff. But if you want to stay relevant, you have got to stay mainstream. Does that make sense? Because at this point, I can't do this for YouTube money. It's impossible. Okay? It's impossible. Because everything that I put out gets thrown into the dirt by their algorithm system, okay? So that being said, if you want to support us through Patreon and that kind of stuff, link in the description below. Also, you have little windows up here that will bring into various other places within the YouTube channel. If you want to come out and train with us, link for that website's in the description below also, okay? If you want, through Patreon, if you want to train with us as often as possible and support us at the same time, you can sign up for $35 a month and you can come out and train with us as often as possible without having to pay full price per individual 2-day class. If you want to buy a hat from us, you certainly can, and I'm in the pipeline for hoodies and that kind of stuff. I recognize what time of year it is. But, with all that being said, guys, remember, a regular guy's firearm is the last defense against tyranny. Be easy.